But shall we pray? Yeah, shall we pray before starting? Why so would you please pray for us, Professor Rich?
Okay.
Yeah, please.
We thank you, dear Lord, Father in heaven, for your gracious mercy upon us. Thank you for this almost new spring, the sunshine today. Thank you for the sunshine in our hearts. We pray that this time together may be useful for your purposes, that we may learn more about how to help this nation of Korea and other countries. We pray, Lord, that you will go with us and before us and be with our presenters especially. We ask in Jesus' name.
Yeah, so our presenters for today are Baroness Peters and Mr. Joe. Shall we give them a big hand? We start with Baroness. The title of her presentation, so long. Epidemiology of fetal alcohol syndrome and patient fast in the South Africa Committee. Right?
And we can eat and listen, that's right?
Yeah, right. Okay, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes,
As you
hello.
see, my topic is epidemiology of fetal alcohol syndrome and partial fetal alcohol syndrome in the South African community. So what is epidemiology? It is the study of the patterns and effects of health and disease conditions in defined communities, right? That disturbs the development of the fetus which causes birth defects. This study was done where I will just refer to FAS, meaning fetal alcohol syndrome. It's a pattern of anomalies. What is anomalies? It is abnormalities and developmental deficits found in children exposed to large amounts of alcohol in the prenatal period, meaning when the mother is pregnant, she ingests alcohol and it affects the development of the fetus and it causes birth defects. This is what children that have fetal alcohol syndrome look like. Their eyes are towards the inside and their noses, the bridge is flat, and they have this part of the mouth. It's called the fulcrum. It is protruded and the upper lip is very thin. Here you can see it more pronounced. Small eye openings, the smooth fulcrum, and the thin upper lip. This is what they look like. This is their birth defects. Then the statistical methods that were used was an active ascertainment two-tier screening methodology, and the Revised Institute of Medicine diagnostic criteria were employed among 818 first grade pupils. The characteristics of children with FAS and PFAS, P meaning partial fetal alcohol syndrome, are contrasted with a randomly selected control group, and the data were collected and analyzed for children in the study regarding three aspects: physical growth and development, including dysmorphology. What is dysmorphology? It's the study of genetic defects. And intelligence and behavioral characteristics, and their mother's social, behavioral, and physical characteristics. Then the data analysis that was done, it was entered and analyzed using the EPI info software of the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and categorical variables comparing cases to controls were analyzed by chi-square, and also Fisher's exact test were appropriate. Odd ratios were calculated for all 2x2 chi-square tests and are not possible for other chi-square configurations. Confidence interval for odd ratios were computed for the 95% level by the Cornfield technique. For continuous variables, the t-test, one-way analysis of variance and difference of proportion test were also used. The results, the rate of fetal alcohol syndrome and partial fetal alcohol syndrome in this area continues as the highest reported in an overall community and is much higher than rates elsewhere. Why? This study was done amongst low economic community, especially on a specific area in the Western Cape, in Cape Town, amongst laborers. There are many wine farms and orchards, and so this was done there. And in past, because of apartheid in the history of South Africa, of course the black people were then used as laborers on the farms, and then the owners would give them, as a partial payment, they would give them alcohol. So it became a trend over many, many years that they were so addicted to alcohol, they became alcoholics, and they drank excessively during weekends because it was free. Until the law then intervened and said it's not allowed. They should be paid in full with wages. And so as a result, this study was done amongst very low economic laborers, kids, and it has been a problem for many years, and it seems to be growing because now it's no longer given to them freely, but it is still freely available for them to buy, to purchase. So this study was done amongst very low economic laborers community. Then in this study, this cohort, it is 68.0 to 89.2 per thousand children. Severe episodic drinking on weekends among mothers of children with fetal alcohol syndrome and partial fetal alcohol syndrome accounts for 96% of all alcohol consumed. That is very, very high, extremely high. And then various measures of maternal drinking are significantly correlated with negative outcomes of children in the areas of non-verbal intelligence, which was minus 0.26, verbal intelligence minus 0.28, and problem behavior, which is 0.31, and an overall score 0.59, and significantly more fetal alcohol syndrome and partial fetal alcohol syndrome exists among children of rural residents. As I said, this was done in a very socioeconomic area and amongst the laborers. And of course, the odd ratio was 3.79. Then here are our results. The first table is the demographic table. 818 children were surveyed. Then there was a control group of children which was surveyed. Then the children with partially fetal alcohol syndrome, and then the children with fetal alcohol syndrome. Amongst them, the males were 51.5, and then the mean, the age was 87.8, and then the height for the children, the grade 1 children was 119.9. The weight was 21.8. The BMI for age was 15.5, and then this was the average BMI for age. Then the child's BMI was 15.3, and the BMI percentile was 38.6. But if we look at the control group and the group with partial fetal alcohol syndrome and children with fetal alcohol syndrome, if we look at the height can you see the difference in height? For the control group and the children, the grade 1 children, it was the same. But for the partial fetal alcohol syndrome, it was one's 114.8 centimeters and 114.3 centimeters. So it is lower than the control children group and the grade 1 group. Then there's a big difference in then of course the occipital circumference, facial circumference was 50.9 in the grade 1 group. For control children the same, but for partial fetal alcohol syndrome it was 49.5, and for fetal alcohol syndrome it was 48, it was lower. Because of birth defects, the alcohol that affects the mother during pregnancy, so of course it affected the circumference is from the occipital bone, from here, the frontal, from here to here. So it was less with these two groups because of the intake of alcohol. And then the dysmorphology score was considerably, there was a considerable significant difference. As you can see, here in the grade 1 students, it was 8.1. The control, it was, the control was 8.1, but with children with fetal alcohol syndrome and partial fetal alcohol syndrome, it was considered worse than the children with PFAS. All the controls on all of the developmental tests. The verbal and non-verbal ability was significantly lower for children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. It's fetal alcohol syndrome and fetal alcohol, partial fetal alcohol falls under fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So they were put together, and the non-verbal ability was significantly lower for children with fetal alcohol syndrome spectrum disorder than for the controls using the one-way analysis of variance, which is P is less than the 0.01.
Okay, Rory, I have a question.
Sure.
In terms of the verbal IQ and non-verbal IQ, the FAS children have a lower score, right?
Yes.
And the others, but the behavior and the total has
Total dysmorphology, the score is higher. Yeah.
So, what they use to be the source of the behavior, because behavior score is higher than the control behavior.
So what did you mention?
Behavior.
Score is higher than control.
Oh, it's higher. These two are higher.
That means they had more behavioral problems.
Yes. The behavior problems are higher.
Yeah, not that they were better behaved,
Yeah.
but that they had more problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
And dysmorphology is the same thing.
yeah.
They had a more unevenness in them.
Yes.
Behavior problem.
The behavior problems are higher than they give more problems
Like
than
double.
the control group. Yes. And because it affects the brain, in a negative way, and so of course their concentration, their intelligence, IQ is lower, their concentration levels are lower. It affects them verbally, non-verbally. Their non-verbal IQ is lower, their verbal IQ is lower compared to the control group and to the grade 1 students. But in this case, compared to the control group. Then the average number of drinks per week during pregnancy, mothers with kids that have FAS, their score was, they had taken 13 drinks per week during pregnancy, and partial fetal 4.9, and the control 6.0. So as you can see, this group is always has affected the most because of the intake of alcohol. The amount of intake of alcohol is much larger and more frequent than the mothers with partial fetal alcohol syndrome as well as the control.
But the controls is almost 50% higher than the PFAS. You have 4.9 in the PFAS, and you have 6 in the control. 6 drinks
Yes.
per week.
Yes,
So they drank more than the PFAS.
they did.
But only 24%.
Percent, yes, yeah, compared to the, yeah, to the percentage. So it wouldn't be that high compared to the percentage. Okay, and then the last one. Once again, the mothers of the control group with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, the number of drinks, how much they were drinking on weekends, the percentage of drinks before pregnancy was very high, 96.0, and mothers of the normal group was 73.0, and then during that was the number of drinks compared to last weekends. It was 96 and 73.0, and then before pregnancy it was 92.3, and for the other group it was 25.6, much lower. And then during pregnancy, the alcohol fetal alcohol spectrum disorder group, the percentage was 95.5. So you can understand why they have such bad birth defects, and their verbal IQ will be low, their intelligence IQ will be low, and the dysmorphology would be much worse than the other groups because the intake during pregnancy was so high. So during the first index trimester, 93.9, the second, 83, and during the third trimester, 79. So it did decrease. Although it decreased, it is still extremely high. Yeah, and as a result, the different intelligence, the intelligence, IQ, verbal IQ, behavior is so high, and verbal IQ so low, intelligence IQ is so low. So as you can see, intake of alcohol is definitely a no-no, especially for mothers who are pregnant, because when they take a drink, their babies are taking a drink, and babies cannot digest the alcohol as a mother would. So it's definitely a no-no. Because some doctors, can you believe it, according to research, that some doctors say a little bit is okay, but I would say definitely not. It's too big a risk to take, to have your kids have any birth defects or suffer from any low IQ, verbal or intelligence, low intelligence IQ. Avi, you're shaking your head.
No, I agree.
Yeah. But even the control group and the more normal children, their mothers still drank.
Yes, they did, but as I
A
said,
little bit.
compared to the history.
Yeah, sure.
And so, habits are very hard to break. And this has been over many, many, many years. And so it's carried down from generation to generation. We either leave a good legacy or we leave a bad legacy. so kids learn by example. They learn from the parents. They live in that environment, in that community. Everybody drinks, so it's a norm. And so they just carry on. And so it goes from one generation to another. And so to outrule that, it will take a long time. And education and prevention measures need to be taken to educate them what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and so on. And you know, alcohol is also very difficult to give up. It's an addiction, and to give up any addiction is very, very difficult. So the education will start with the young kids, educating them how serious it can be for them and their kids in the future if they continue in that line. So they need to be educated. So prevention measures are very high on the list to educate the parents, the younger generation, to refrain from the intake of alcohol. So what is the conclusion? The third way of study in this region of South Africa has demonstrated that these methods of epidemiological research are consistent and improving in ability to diagnose at least 2 levels of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and the rate of fetal alcohol syndrome and partial fetal alcohol syndrome remain at world record rates in this population, making this so-called a prime candidate for further research into the etiology of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and for prevention programs to test the efficacy of fetal alcohol titrate. So this study was done only amongst Black people. It was not done amongst white people, and so I think this is a little biased. Although they said in a certain part of the study, they said that they found that white kids did not suffer from fetal alcohol syndrome. Obviously, if it was like that, it's because of the apartheid system. They didn't choose to do this. It was thrust upon them. They had no choice. It was part of payment for them. And so, because of that, they became addicted to alcohol, and it became their lifestyle, and it became the norm. So, I think, just my opinion, I think this is a little biased. And we have to take the history of South Africa into consideration, why this group of people are addicted to alcohol. And as a result, their kids suffer from such abnormalities. Thank you very much.
Thank you for wonderful presentation, Baroness. Okay, so we should have a question. Yeah. Question, please, question. Nothing? Oh yeah. Here.
So obviously some of the kids who are control children
Yes.
had mothers who drank a lot.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So is it known what predisposes some children to be more likely to have FAS? Because if you look at the amount of drinking by the mothers, in the control, it's a lot less than the FAS mothers, but still the standard deviation is really big. So some of those mothers drank a lot, right?
Yes.
And the children's turned out okay. So is it known what makes you more likely to have FAS?
It's because the number of drinks you drink per day and how often and for how long, and during the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester. Some moms drank heavily during the first trimester compared to others maybe just in the third trimester. So the most crucial part is usually the second trimester. So if mothers are drinking more during the second trimester, then the kids are more likely to have this morphology and have more birth defects than those who drink less or more in the first or last trimester. So when the brain is being formed, and
I guess my question is if we have 2 identical children,
Yes.
the mothers drank the same amount at the same time,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean that the 2 children will turn out to have the same outcome just wondering if there are other aspects of their genetics that.
Oh, yes, they did, yes. They said it does depend on the genetics of the kid. Yeah, the makeup of the kid, the genetics, yes. Some are very vulnerable.
Genetics of the parents.
Of the parents, sorry, of the parents, yes. It does play, it plays an important part. Yes, you're right.
I take a little issue with your statement that this study was biased, because it wasn't comparing white to black. It was studying only a specific group in an area that has a specific type of problem. So you were taking your statistics from this group. It was known that they were ingesting alcohol. They weren't comparing them, the white people in that area to the black people. It was all entirely black. So it was just studying a problem in a black population, no bias. You could study the same problem in an all-white area, and it would be no bias, because you're only studying this group. If you studied the two groups together and then tried to say that, well, black people are more injured or more susceptible or whatever than white people, then you've got the problem of dealing with a bias.
Maybe, I hear where you're coming
Now, the reason, wait, just one thing. The problem originated in a bigotry and bias, you see? But the results of it are not biased.
I guess another way of saying it is, if you were to take the conclusion and try to thrust that upon the entire population, then that conclusion would be biased.
That's right.
This doesn't
There you
describe
go.
the white population, right?
Right.
I think the study in itself, in a self-contained way, is not biased, but I see where you're coming from.
Yes, I hear you, but I also,
Yeah.
Yeah.
with my history and the history of South Africa, that's why I say what I say.
If you tried to take that and say every white person or Oriental person that drinks this frequently will have that amount, then without further study, you would be making a biased statement.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
I think that's what you were saying,
Yeah,
right?
okay, so, can we give it more? Okay,
Yeah.
we can.
Johnny, I think we'd rather take a picture first right now, because some of them have class 1 o'clock. So I think let's take everybody picture, and then while we are listening, maybe they can listen afterwards, but when we are discussing, they have to leave. So shall we take a picture first?
So you want everybody to gather right in the middle here?
I think so. I don't know what to think. 박사님 어디 가는 expert for pictures.
Every other one page we have nice
Praise God, praise God, praise God. Not thank you, praise God.
First give you a script.
Claudia.
I'm glad to see all of you and getting nervous being up here at the same time. I'm Esther Jo, third semester student of MPH. I have a privilege to be a researcher of Korean Institute on Alcohol Problems. Just like you. So, I joined the International Alcohol Control Policy Study Survey last year. It was very tough, but surely an eye-opening to me. Eye-opening experience to me. Actually, I'm very interested in women drinking, especially kitchen drinker. Have you heard about kitchen drinker? You can imagine what does that mean, because by the word.
A little wine in the soup and a little wine in the
So kitchen overloading, drinking in the kitchen alone, getting alcoholic. They are increasing more and more every year, making a lot of domestic problems in Korea. So I want to work on that topic more for my thesis. Anyway, different topic for today. Today I'm going to present titled, as you know, dependence on alcohol among Korean women drinkers. Oh, before going further, I will introduce about IAC I mentioned just before, very briefly, for who have no idea about that. Is it okay? Okay. It is benchmarking after international tobacco control. Okay. This study was performed to examine the dependence on alcohol among Korean women drinkers. About sampling methods, we interviewed from 16 to 64 age group in 34,779,121. We chose cluster random sampling. So we pick up 7 large South Korean cities: Seoul, Incheon, Daejeon, Daegu, Ulsan, Busan, Gwangju. Right.
You have soul in the wrong place.
It doesn't work.
F5.
Yeah, but it doesn't work. Okay. In the largest cities, as I mentioned, here Seoul, Busan, Incheon. So we interviewed 40 city interview tours by districts. For example, in Seoul, 강남구, 관악구, 노원구, 광진구. Together for 130. Okay. We interviewed 141 women drinkers in a total of 2,611 respondents. And we had a face-to-face questionnaire survey was conducted for women drinkers in the 2012 International Alcohol Control Survey in Korea. Okay, let's look at the results. Look at the table 1. Here are drinking places by ages. First, at your home. Drinking places were significantly different among the ages. I mean, 16 to 18, they answered yes, 27.7%. And 19 to 29, 88.9%, and 30 to 39, 77.1%, and 40 to 49, 59.1%, and over 50, 42.1%. Do you notice that there were significantly different, right? Okay, and drinking places, restaurant. Let's look at the tables and tell the difference by the ages. And this is as someone else's home. In front of convenience stores. Interesting fact here, 19 to 29 showed much more percentage, right, in front of convenience stores. That means younger women, they feel free to drink in front of the public. But you know, older women, they don't want to drink in front of the public places. That's very interesting. And at pubs, hotels, or taverns, the younger people, younger women, tend to drink. The places like this. And at other clubs, groups, or meetings such as RSA, Rotary, hobby groups, or committee meetings, the group showed significantly less percentage than the older people, older women. Okay, next, table 2 showed alcohol dependence of ages in Korea. There were significant differences among age groups who answered yes in the feelings. In the last 6 months, have you had a feeling or guilt or remorse after drinking? Not much. I think that's a good point. And the question, yeah, there were also significant differences among age groups who answered yes in the last 6 months. Has a friend or family member told you about things you said or did while you were drinking that you could not remember? The next question, in the last 6 months, have you failed to do what was normally expected of you because of drinking? Also, please attention, age group 19 to 29. They said 24.9% said yes. And next question. In the last 6 months, have you taken a drink when you first get up in the morning? Luckily, not much. But they did.
Yeah.
Still higher.
Yeah, still
Yeah.
higher. Say yes. The age group 19 to 29 say yes, 3.4%. Over 50? Nobody. That's good. They are getting old, they are getting wise at the same time. I think that's a good point.
Maybe they're too weak to reach the bottom.
No, they think about health.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see,
you're
I see.
right, yeah. As we getting old, yeah, we care about our health. First, the women drinkers prefer drinking in their own home. Every age group, prefer drinking in their own home. And second, younger women in their 20s tend to drink in public places, like such as pubs, 88.9%. That means they really feel free to drink in front of everybody, the public. And 3, drinking rate in public places decrease by age, as you noticed already. In conclusion, these findings suggest that prevention efforts and health education aimed at young students should take into account the different motivations why college students may let them drink. The baroness mentioned before, intaking alcohol for women is very dangerous, right? So I think, in my humble opinion, education starts sooner.
Should start.
Yeah, should sooner. Okay, this is very simple, and this is all for my presentation. Thank you.
This answer is the first presentation in English.
Good job.
Good job.
Good job. I'm so nervous. Yeah. Do you have questions? Any questions?
So back to the result. Go back to the result.
Yes.
Because you made like a conclusion, like younger women, like 20s, tend to drink in the public places, and then like old women, they are reluctant to drink in the public place, according to your survey. But I think it's kind of dangerous to jump into that kind of results with only your survey results, because I think maybe there's another factor. So like where each example is the each factors we can find is the teenagers, they don't have the money. So even if they want to go to the like a luxury place,
They can't enjoy the atmosphere in a luxury bars or pubs.
so that's why they prefer the drinking in front of the convenience store.
Convenience store.
Convenience store. Yeah.
And a bag of the school, like this.
Yeah,
Yes.
So I think from the only this result, this survey, is kind of dangerous to make that kind of.
Okay, this study has not finished. I'm working on this. Yeah, so very interesting. I'm very
So
happy.
your preliminary results.
Yeah, you're right.
But this one is also over 2,000, right?
Yes.
I think Esther's study is only for the female. And I think if we compare with the male and female about this matter, what Sona was saying,
Yeah, you're right.
maybe among the older men, they may drink in front of the convenience store more than women. The older
You're
women,
right.
maybe. So if we could find that one, and we could have some other.
We can make another questionnaires considering like those factors.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm still working.
Or just take and compare the older men group from this study to the women group. And then you'll say that even though more women prefer to drink at home or something, then you can compare the men and the women and still refer it to the women.
It was very
Do-
interesting presentation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do we know about the kind of research people? Because their intelligence and their kind of, what kind of, people comes from all kinds of jobs.
Yeah.
Because there are 0% to come from the older age in the drinking in the morning. Because when I was a child, there are some kind of mommy the group also drinking because they had kind of trouble in their home. Yeah, in case of the kind of troublesome from the family, domestic problem like that. So I wanna know about what kind of the researchers from that group like that.
Yeah, these people are all over Korea. Actually, Esther showed, we chose not only from one province, we chose all different, even include Jeju Island.
Yes.
And because the older ladies, there's nobody is drinking in the morning. But
Yeah, I know. But during the war, there are kind of during the wartime and then during the,
They need them.
yeah,
Because, yeah, they were very dangerous.
yeah.
Yeah, they are more dangerous and very nervous.
So yeah, that's why I have a kind of question like that. Comes from that.
Drink and
But
forget about
evidently,
everything.
even though it was high
Mm,
50 years ago or so,
yeah,
60 years ago, now there are considerably less
yeah,
people, women particularly, drinking in the morning.
yeah, because of
And if
kind
they
of,
do, they don't want to say.
So,
yeah, I know.
Hey, Professor Maxine.
do we have demographic information, as in the socioeconomics of the respondents? Do we
Yes,
have
we
that
do.
information?
Yes, we
Okay.
have.
That might be, based on what Hannah was saying, it might be an interesting thing to look at, to see if the demographics changes those results a little bit.
You can look up Wizard anytime. Yeah, but Lydia, Angel Lydia. Yeah.
You know, I have an issue with this alcohol dependence because I looked at the teenage data and they're kind of similar with this. Have you had a drink in the morning? Do you feel
Yeah,
remorseful? And most people go like, no, I don't feel remorseful when I drink. I always do what I'm expected to do. Can we, I don't know what conclusions we can draw. Does it mean these people are not alcoholics? Or, because from their own reports, they say they don't feel any remorse for drinking. As public health people, can we do anything about, because if I'm not remorseful, why would you come and teach me
Yeah.
about quitting
Anybody can answer to this question.
yeah, it's not for us, it's for everyone.
Yeah, that's for everyone.
So you raise a very good point there, because when you look at the theories of change, behavioral change, if you're not,
If
if
you
I don't
don't,
think I have a problem, I'm not going to, and then education and information in of itself doesn't change you. So it's like, how do we impact this significant group that's saying, I don't have a problem.
yeah, because
They-
when
they have a
even with
problem.
teenagers, most
Yeah.
of them don't have problem. They don't feel remorseful. So if you're a health educator, I don't have a problem. Why would you come to me and tell me to quit drinking?
I think for this point, we needed to approach like a social, how can I say, like a socially approach. I mean, in older times, when I was even young, like smoking on the street, especially women, or drinking, it's kind of not accepted in our society.
Yeah.
So people kind of like feel guilty. But nowadays, look at the, especially I think, like media, from the media, I think it's kind of, drinking and smoking is kind of make me look cool. So I don't have to feel guilty. Why men is smoking, then why women? I can smoke too. So I think we need to, in society, we need to change some kind of, atmosphere. So maybe in the government level, or we need to approach it from the
Yeah. In the study that I looked at from this on life satisfaction, in the two groups, they were almost the same, whether they were satisfied with their life or they were dissatisfied with their life. Around almost a third, between a quarter and a third of all the people in both the satisfied and dissatisfied groups were remorseful for drinking. So that's almost a 1 out of 3, between 1 out of 4 and 1 out of 3 people felt remorse for drinking. So, I think when you get into more specialized group, you may find that they're not doing it. But when you're looking at the whole group altogether, the statistics came out about 1 in 3, 1 in 4.
Definitely remorseful.
That's right.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
problem is the young people. Yeah, that's the problem. I look at some trends, and then the trend of the heavy drinkers in the young age is increasing a lot, very rapidly, dramatically. So, I think we need to do something on this, especially like young people.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, the overall morality of the young people is decreasing, so there's less remorse.
Thank you. Or questions. Okay, what do you think of her Esther's first presentation? What do you think?
Yeah.
Very good.
Good job. So we have come to the end of our seminar for today and also for the month of March. Please don't forget our next seminar, next meeting will be on the 1st of April at 12 o'clock with lunch. I like it.
And we should say thank you to our wonderful boss for feeding us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The fruit, Johnny Bob.
Oh, okay, well, thank you for the fruit, for dessert. Yeah.
I serve. Okay, so
The newcomers today, the visitors. There are.
Introduce.
Introduce yourself.
okay,
Who are you?
yeah, why yourself?
I'm the one you want.
No, Hannah, I think this year you are the first one. You didn't come last week. Go ahead.
진짜 나오던가? 안녕하세요.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Sonwha So, and then I just entering the PhD programs. What's it? What is the English name of our program? Biocommodants and then my classmate. Yeah, two of us. And Vidya and then Rhonda. Yes.
Curious.
Wow.
I have to join in these programs and then.
I didn't know
No more thing. I mean, yeah, that's
Thank you.
it.
We're glad to have you. Welcome.
I'm Esther.
famous Esther here.
I'm the other PhD student's daughter. She invited me to this seminar, so it's been really wonderful.
Okay, yeah, nice meeting you. So we have two new
Yes.
members. Yeah, new members. Yeah. Okay, give them her and then big hand again. Okay, nice to meet you. So hold on, we shouldn't forget pray. It's important. Okay. So would you pray for us? Yeah.
Okay.
Professor William.
Let's start for prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us this opportunity again. Thank you for bright sunshine and blue sky that we could see and enjoy. Thank you for the presenters today to give us the informations and bless them and their studies and their effort may help Korea and globally to help humanity's health. And be with each one of us here and also be with all our researchers even though we're not here. And bless each one of the members and protect them and guide them until we meet. Thank you for listening to our prayers in Jesus' name.
Okay. Thank you. And see you next meeting. Okay. Okay. Promise.
Okay, we're going to have separate. 아니 껍질하고